Hello, comrades. Let me know when you can hear me. I'm going to close that behind me, actually. All right. Well, no, this is my Halloween costume. What do you guys think? Figured it'd be fitting to at least dress up as something for half a second. Doesn't take much to throw on a coat and a hat, huh? All right. All right, greetings from Soviet Russia. Let's get into the end of month. I am doing it on Halloween just because that works for me. I understand some people might be busy, but this will be out there. This is actually a real Soviet Union 1972 vintage coat, by the way. It actually says made in Moscow on the buttons in Russian on the back of them. Okay, let's see. It would not be a Stalin costume. This would be like Invasion of Afghanistan Soviet Union costume, technically. Okay, let's see. So what I'm going to do first, actually, is do the horror story of the worst PC problem I've ever had in my life. And then I'm going to go through things from this month. And then I'm going to go through the premium Patreon questions. And then, of course, Q&As at the end. So if you want to tip me for a question, save it for the end. It'll make it easier to not miss it. But if you need to duck out and want to put it now and then leave, that's totally understandable. I'll get to it eventually, most likely. I don't think I've ever missed a tipped question yet. So, okay. First things first. Let's see. So the worst problem I ever had with a PC, my first build was an i5 3570K, 8 gigabytes of RAM. The RAM actually went bad within a month, and I had to send it back. Wasn't the worst thing, really. And then I had a 560 Ti. That broke. I RMA'd it. And then it broke again. And then I RMA'd it, sold it to someone at college, asked him how it was doing. That broke. I told him I would help him RMA it, even though it was, it's my warranty, right? So I would help him RMA it. I'm like, come on, man, give me the money for shipping. I feel bad that the thing I sold you broke. RMA'd it for the guy in college, sent it back, gave it back to him. Within 2 months, it broke again. That EVGA 560 Ti broke 4 times. My brother's broke twice too. Fermi was not reliable. But that's not actually the horror story. No, the horror story was what happened with the motherboard of that build. So 1 year after I built my PC, I started having, let me see. It was about a year and a half, right? I kept swapping components. Eventually, I got a 6950, then 6950 Crossfire, traded that for a 7970. And then I upgraded power supplies so I could overclock more. I got a 10-year warranty Seasonic 1,000 watt power, 850 watt power supply, because I was like, this will last me for the rest of my life, right? 10-year warranty. Then the motherboard started breaking. It was a year and a half old, so I assumed it was just needed to be RMA'd. So I send it back to ASRock. They send it back, and then the problem pops up again after about 2 months. What was the problem? No, after about a week. The problem was, out of nowhere, while using my computer, black screen. And I would have to turn off my PC, let no power run through it for about 10 minutes, turn it back on, and everything would be fine. And then it would turn off in, let's say, 5 days. And then I'd do it again, and then it would turn off with a black screen in 3 days. And then eventually 1 day, then every few hours, then it just started and I had to send it back again. So I sent it back to ASRock 3 times. And then eventually I just kept it, ordered an MSI, I think it was Z87 was the chipset for, or Z77 for Ivy Bridge. And that one had the same problem pop up after 2 weeks. And so I sent that back to Amazon for a refund. And I said, I'm giving up. I know it's not the graphics card. I know it's not the RAM. I've tried everything else. I'm just going to switch to a Haswell i7 and an Asus motherboard that's super high quality. Now, that one lasted a month. And then it started having the problem again. I want you to imagine the mindset of about every month or so, I can't use my PC. And it's not like I have to send back a graphics card. I have to completely disassemble my PC to take the motherboard out. I started going insane. I remember the last time it happened, I freaked out so much that I took a sword I have and started chopping wood in half in the backyard. Of course, I was in college, much younger than now. I was so angry. And then someone at college told me that happened to him because of a power supply. He said one of his Raid Max power supplies did this, and when he switched power supplies, motherboard stopped breaking. Now, what blew my mind is that this was a like $150, 80 plus platinum, 10-year warranty Seasonic, and that was frying my motherboard slowly every month. So anyone who swears by Seasonic, I always say no. That and I just ruled out the power supply because if it has a 10-year warranty, everyone says Seasonic is great. It has to be great. I've had other Seasonics fail on my mining rigs too. I have one that's been bulletproof though, so I can't say Seasonic's terrible. It's just, guys, don't swear by any power supply. That's the moral of the story. And that is by far the worst thing that ever happened to me with PCs. It was a nightmare because think about it. It didn't show up for 2 weeks at a time. So I wouldn't know if it was going to break until right before like the Amazon warranty would expire or something. Yeah. So there's the PC horror story. Now let's get into the loose ends from this month, comrades. Okay. So first of all, I'm just going to get right to the thing people keep spamming me in the comments about. Someone who's a premium Patreon member, Rubber Ducks, asks, why do you think AMD has not been releasing the 5800, 5900 series yet? Are they waiting for a new node? Is Epic taking up all the 7-nanometer yields? So right off the bat, no. TSMC does not have capacity problems. They are making wild profits, but no one I've talked to says there's capacity problems. These reports are overblown. TSMC, I mean, think about it. If you listen to AMD's earnings, due to the cyclical nature of the professional market, their GPU sales were slightly down. But I believe I heard they sold substantially less professional cards, and yet they almost sold the same amount. They almost made, I believe, the same revenue from graphics as before. So think about it. That means their graphics card gaming sales are doing so well, it's making up for professional revenue. That's like cut in half. Don't quote me on any of the numbers exactly, but that was my takeaway from that. And yet, Navi's in stock and it's fine. I don't see these capacity problems people are talking about. It's fine. They don't have them. I don't think they have tons of ample capacity at TSMC, but I am not seeing the problems people are talking about. So I don't think it's that. Moving on then, why isn't the 5900 or 5800 XT, whatever they're going to call the next highest card, out yet? Well, we know it's been rumored. It's shown up in drivers, right? Navi 12. If it's Navi 12, maybe it's not Navi 12. I guess we can say that. But I'm not entirely sure. There might be last-minute driver or design problems. Again, after all, this is what happened with the rest of the Navi lineup as well. And I believe since last December, they've completely redesigned the lineup, or at least reconfigured the core configurations. Obviously, Navi wasn't redesigned from the ground up since last December, but you know, it could be that, because I really think or thought they were going to launch it this year. But I'm going to say this: if we don't get some gigantic rumors about the 5900 XT within a couple weeks, and then I don't know. I don't know if it's coming out this year, and then I would wonder if it's even coming out Q1. Right? I'm not entirely sure. What I do know is this, though. If it's not coming out, there has to be some odd reason. Either they're just completely happy with 5700 XT sales, or there's some last-minute problems. There were last-minute driver problems with Vega. I mean, that's certainly an option. And I just want to reiterate really well here, I have in my notes, how odd it is this graphics card isn't out yet. So let's forget about sources and rumors. Let's just look at this objectively. AMD launches the Radeon 7 Q2 of 2019. And it actually sold decently for how many they produced. They did that because they had to delay the rest of the Navi lineup. We know this, okay? Like Navi was supposed to come out a little earlier. It was delayed due to last minute problems. They had to do a retap out, okay? So that's why. They discontinued the Radeon 7, and that shouldn't surprise anyone, right? That was only meant to be a temporary flagship, a last minute decision. If they discontinued the Radeon 7, wouldn't that mean they're going to bring out something to be the new flagship? The Radeon 7 is stronger than the 5700 XT, guys. It is weird to discontinue the Radeon 7, which they are still producing for the professional market. It's not like they're not making these anymore, people, which they're still producing for the professional market, and then just say we're not going to sell it to consumers all of a sudden. That would mean they're going to bring out a bigger card. Additionally, Sapphire said publicly in an interview they're working on a 16 gigabyte 5700 XT Toxic Edition. Where is it? All the other AIB models are out. If we don't see that in a month, I would wonder if they canceled it. Why would Sapphire cancel a 5700 XT Toxic? Because they know a 5800 or a 5900 XT is coming, and that would be the better card to make the 16 gigabyte special edition. To me, all signs point to a card paper launching by the end of this year that's stronger. The source I talked to, and that we've seen on other websites reported as well, assuming they don't just copy my stuff, right? We don't know. Who knows? Said that it's going to be 256-bit. It's not that hard then to imagine a 52 to 64 compute unit card that has around the same die size as a Radeon 7 with a 256-bit bus and just, 30% faster memory. A 30% stronger card would compete with the 2080 Ti. They've been making cards this big since 2018. Again, Vega 20, which I pointed to, you can't see right over here. This isn't hard for them to make a die size this big. They canceled Radeon 7, and it wouldn't take that much more power to compete with a 2080 Ti. So again, that's all I have to say is there has to be some last minute problem, or they're just like happy with the sales. There's absolutely no reason for them to not launch this. I think it's common sense, and I am surprised the 5900 XT hasn't been announced yet. That's my opinion. I'm surprised it hasn't been announced yet, but you know what? Threadripper is coming out in a month. It would make a ton of sense to announce the next the next flagship around Threadripper's launch. So when everyone's building Threadripper builds this Christmas, they can buy a 2080 Ti competitor from AMD. So that's what I would say. If they don't announce it in 2 weeks, right? And November 5th is rumored when the Threadripper's announced. I don't think it's coming out this year. Or if it is, it's going to be a paper launch in like New Year's Eve, just like the 7970 was, which it could be, right? I will answer one question. No, 256-bit will not bottleneck a large Navi. I didn't say biggest Navi. There will be bigger Navi cards. There will be Navi on RDNA 2.0. That's not what we're talking about. There's always been a rumored, if you go back to the original leaks about Navi, they were always rumored to have at least 2 or 3 dies that had a 256-bit bus. And that makes complete sense to me, right? Like, they're using very slow GDR6 on the 5700 XT. And remember the 6970 and the 6870? 256-bit, 256-bit, right? This is not new, that there are several tiers of dies that are all 256-bit. AMD's done this before multiple times. I think it makes sense. Right now, they're using 14 gigabit per second memory chips. They can go from 14 to 18, and that's 25-30% increase in bandwidth right there. Boom, done. That's enough bandwidth. 30% more bandwidth. Go to like 56 compute units or something. 35. Like, that's enough. That would put it about 30% stronger. That should put it right there above the 2080 Super. And you know what? The benefit of a 256-bit bus is that they can give it 8 gigabytes of RAM, which makes it cheaper to produce than the 11 or should be 12 gigabyte 2080 Ti, and then they can make a special edition 16 gigabyte version that has more memory than the 2080 Ti. I actually think 256-bit makes more sense. I do. Of course, it's not 100% confirmed, but I think it is 256-bit. And there has been a rumor that the die may accept HBM or 256-bit, and it's so that they can take the top dies that don't have defects, give them HBM, and then disable them for gamers and use 256-bit. Because if you think about it, if you cut it down from, let's say, 72 compute units to 64. 256-bit would still barely be enough for the cheaper cards. Again, that's what I know. Watch my Navi videos, though. I did 2 of them. I've talked about this in length, but I had to bring it up because I'm dressed like this, Ryan, because it's Halloween. But yeah, so I don't know. I expect it to be announced within a couple weeks. If it's not, I don't know. I've told you everything I know. I've had no update since the Navi leak I did. No one's updated me on anything that I talked to. No one. All right. Let me double check that all the candy isn't gone quick. Still candy. Honest neighbors, it seems. Oh, wait. Let me watch this guy. I think this kid's considering stealing my candy. I'm going to watch him for a second. They were honest kids, and they were teenagers, too. Good boys. All right. I won't murder any children. Don't worry. Okay. So next up that I have to talk about after the 5900 XT loose ends from this month is my Whispers of Golden Cove video. Already part of what my sources said has been confirmed to be true. I'm not making up my sources. I only say I have sources when I have them. No, I give them 2 pieces per person. In Soviet Russia, we have plentiful candy, more candy than you capitalist pigs are led to believe by your corrupt news agency. 2 pieces and more potatoes than you could ever want. But if I am speculating about something, I will say I'm speculating, right? I'll tell you I'm speculating. And if you go back to some of my earlier videos, I do a speculation on the 12 nanometer refresh of Turing. And I nailed almost all of it. I think it was like that Ampere GDC video I did. I almost completely nailed the refresh in core counts. And that was speculation. But when I say a source told me, it's a source. And I want to cover this quickly, too, because this is hilarious to me. I keep forgetting to say it in the podcast and the videos. A lot of people, especially on the AMD subreddit, and share this part of the podcast with them, people, because I want them to hear this. Timestamp it and post it there. I didn't make up my Zen 3 Whispers sources. I had real sources. And here's how you know. Do you think I made up SMT4? What a fucking random thing to make up. That's insanely specific to say AMD's working on SMT4. If I was going to make it up, I would do some bullshit YouTube video where I say Zen 3 exclusive, 8% more IPC and less power usage. That was Red Gaming Tech. Like anyone can guess an 8% IPC increase, guys. I said really specific stuff about Zen 3. And even if it was pulled off the roadmap, it's going into Zen. Well, I don't know. I guess maybe they just canceled it. I actually don't know if they're going to put it in Zen 4. But I don't lie, and I'm not making up sources. But yeah, I really did have to say that there. Let me put that down there. SIM24. I'm just writing down the timestamps. Yeah, so... Well, it's a weird circle jerk in the AMD subreddit. I feel like a lot of those people are astroturfers. But I have more to say about that later. Let's get to the Whispers of Golden Cove video loose ends. So remember what I said, though. Intel is trying to pull up as many of their things as possible, right? Intel wants to bring out Tiger Lake mid-2020 with, I believe, I don't have exact IPC numbers, but what I've been told is 5 to 10%, more than 5. They say they're trying for double digits. Willow Cove's supposed to be not as big as Ice Lake, but it's supposed to work. It's actually supposed to get decent yields and have better IPC. I don't know if it will happen, but that's what Intel says they're going to accomplish. And 10 nanometer is working well enough to get Ice Lake on server. And remember, Lower base clocks on Ice Lake aren't a problem for server. If they can only clock it to 2 gigahertz, it doesn't matter if it's more efficient. So that's why it's not entirely unbelievable that they might bring out this 38 core Ice Lake, which is what I said. They're bringing out higher core count Ice Lakes on 10 nanometer. That's what I reported in my Whispers video before anyone else said it. And now it's official. They are. I didn't make up my sources. And do not underestimate Intel. They're bringing Sapphire Rapids. They want Sapphire Rapids to use Golden Cove. I know on the roadmaps it says Willow Cove, but I'm telling you, my source said Golden Cove. My source could be wrong, but I'm telling you what he said. That's what a Whispers video is. All right. And I'm excited that at least a third of my leak has been confirmed officially. So again, guys, you can all doubt me as long as you want. WCCF Tech can continue to not report any of the stuff I say ahead of time, but they're just losing views because I'm not lying. Okay. And the final loose end here. Let's see, before we get to some reader mail questions. So if you listen to Broken Silicon, let's see here. So then at 20 minutes, right, I was talking about Intel. And then, sorry, this just saves me time so I can put timestamps for you guys. And then we're at 21 now. Well, 22, let's say, for PC versus console. So in Broken Silicon, I said several times things about gaming with a controller, and I've said this in the Discord too. I just want everyone who follows me to know this. I never said controllers are better than keyboard and mouse. What I've said is they're fine, and they're fine for some people, and I get that some people hate using them. But that some things are undoubtedly better for a controller, and some things are undoubtedly better for a keyboard and mouse. I have gamed on controllers for a long time, so I typically prefer a controller, and I do very well in some games, including Battlefield 5 Online. I do very well with a controller. You might not, but I do. Okay, you don't have to do well. I do well. However, there are games like Fallout where I just can't stand using a controller in those games, which is funny because it's another first-person shooter. But I insist on using a keyboard and mouse for, I think, Wolf and any Bethesda game. I use a keyboard and mouse because they just nail the controls. Any Valve game, whether it's Left 4 Dead or Half-Life, keyboard and mouse. There's something about the snappiness of a Valve game where you just got to use a keyboard and mouse. And of course, RTS games, but that's duh. But what my point is, in the end of a Broken Silicon, where I said, if you're not playing some of these console games, you're just missing some of the best games in history. My point is, if I can do well with a controller online, PC online with Battlefield 5, that doesn't mean controllers are useless. I understand you may prefer keyboard and mouse. I'm not saying it's better than a keyboard and mouse, but you can't say it's useless if I'm going 20-2 online on PC with a controller, right? Like, you can't make that claim. That's my point. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying it's better, but I do think people underestimate how good you can be with a controller. And in fact, I think a lot of it's dead zone. A lot of people, I don't know if they know this, the dead zone default on controllers and games is horrible. It makes it almost impossible to hit something. You got to turn down the dead zone so much that it almost starts walking without you pressing anything. I'll answer this question quickly just since we're on the subject. Someone asked, what are considered some of the best games that you can't get on PC? I mean, frankly, PlayStation exclusives. In a nutshell, in terms of the best games I've ever played, I mean, Demon Souls, I don't know, right? There's PS2 games. I didn't play a lot of exclusives on PS2, though. God of War is great. Everyone knows that. The Last of Us was so good, it almost changed who I was. Like, The Last of Us is such a good game. If you haven't played it, you're literally missing out on the next Half-Life 2. This is a game every game will be compared to. Red Dead Redemption 2, which is coming to PC, but you could have been playing it for a year. I don't know. God, there's so many games. I used to like Little Big Planet. There's so many games. Resistance, Killzone. Killzone's probably my favorite first-person shooter series in history. Besides Half-Life 2 probably ties it. I don't know, right? How long do you want me to ramble on about my games? This is a good suggestion for Die Shrink. If you want me and Dan to talk about games, I think that'd be better for a podcast, but I don't want to bog people down here. We can get to that later in the Q&A. All right, let's move on. I'm bogging down. All right. Time for Patreon questions, and then we'll get to Q&A. All right. First, the Net Burst subscribers. Frederick Lau asked a lot of questions, and I put some of them. And guys, if you don't see your questions here, they're probably going to be in Broken Silicon or Die Shrink. Just listen to all of the podcasts, and I'll get to them. Frederick Lau asks, what would be your reason to invest in AMD as well as a reasons not to? Right. So this is not financial advice. Let me see, where are we at? 25 AMD. This is not financial advice, but what I would say is this. Do you think AMD is going to maintain their advantage? And more important, do you think AMD is positioning themselves correctly for the future? Don't worry about Intel, right? AMD has been ahead of Intel before. The Athlon series blew them away, and in fact, Phenom 2 almost caught up to Intel for a year. But it didn't last long enough, and they didn't capitalize on their success. AMD seems to be capitalizing on their success substantially better than they did before. And I would say Zen versus, I guess we'll just say Skylake, because they're still using Skylake. Zen versus Skylake is a substantially bigger upset than the Athlon 1. Substantially bigger. This is a way, 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 way bigger deal. Zen 1 launched, and even though it was 10%, even maybe 20% worse at gaming, it brought double the cores Intel had at the less power usage. That's insane. It brought more core counts for less power usage at a cheaper cost to server. Zen Plus bumped up performance by 10%, brought 32 cores to Threadripper on desktop. And then Zen 2 doubled the cores, lowered power consumption, and leapfrogged Intel and IPC. This is a way bigger deal. And Zen 3 should bring about a 10% IPC increase, a slight clock speed bump, latency improvements, and I assume a couple of other things that I'm not entirely sure about. Maybe a couple models with stacked memory. I know Cortex thinks it might still have SMT4 actually on select custom versions, which I could see, by the way. So Zen 3 won't be as big as Zen 2 probably, but it'll probably be halfway between Zen Plus and Zen 2. This is way bigger than Athlon, okay? The question is, do you think AMD can keep this up? Because I don't see Intel having anything that can catch up in 2020. Ice Lake's a big deal. Oh, I forgot to say that too. Ice Lake server, 38 cores. People are saying, who cares? Well, think about it, right? They're on 28 cores now. They're probably going to lower power consumption by 10% while increasing core counts by 50%. That's a big deal with 18% more IPC, which, by the way, everyone, is more IPC than Zen 2 by like a hair. So Ice Lake server should bring IPC advantage to Intel again. It should bring core counts not as good, but close, and at least power consumption will be kept in check. That's not catching up to Zen 3, but that does make it catch up halfway. And right now, they're less than half as good. That's why Ice Lake server is such a big deal. And so you have to ask yourself, will Zen 3 stay ahead of this? And will Zen 4 be another Zen 2? Because it could be, right? That's why you would stay invested in AMD. And most importantly, do you think AMD is positioning themselves for the future? Don't worry about Intel. Intel's only one competitor. They're going to have to worry about RISC-V custom components soon. And by the way, NVIDIA is working on RISC-V processors. Hello? RISC-V will probably be the standard in a decade, or at least something comparable to the popularity of ARM and x86. So that's something you got to think about. Is AMD positioning themselves for that? Well, if they're if they do well with semi-custom, probably, because what's going to happen in the future is AMD is going to have to decide, can we custom design products better than customers can for themselves? And this brings me to another reader mail question from Frederick Lau. How will RISC-V change the competitive landscape for AMD and Intel? I'll tell you how. HP can now make a processor without a license. They don't need the x86 license, people. They don't need that license anymore. So they can just design the perfect laptop for their Envy series. Think about it. That's a big problem for AMD and Intel, but AMD is going semi-custom. So if AMD can get ahead of the curve and custom and be a boutique vendor where HP comes to them and says, you know what, let's make a cafeteria processor. We'll take this RISC-V architecture here. Maybe we want this RDNA 5.0 graphics component here. We want this stacked memory, and we want this many cores in our chiplet. If AMD can do that for HP better than HP can design and order their own units themselves, AMD is set up for a successful future. But if HP or Dell has the money to design their own chips, and goddamn do they have the money, people, better than AMD can for their own laptops, that is a problem for AMD. That is a problem for Intel. And Intel's Lakefield is a big deal, right? But my concern with Intel is they are just so big they can afford to make everything, right, at once and hope one thing sticks. But they need to get into a point where they can custom design SoCs for Apple and stuff. That's the future. That's how you stay ahead of RISC-V. Okay? So that's my answer to that question. I think that was a pretty good answer. Blokes writes in, just like you guys can if you support me on Patreon, and he says, as far as built-in ASIC filters for GPUs or CPUs, there's a bunch of things where we haven't even featured yet, which would be beneficial. For instance, post-AA is simply one of them, but just useful would be a fancy sharpening filter that is an ASIC. And he actually goes on and on about all these other things, and that's true. When I talk about NVIDIA's future of graphics cards, which I think the best thing NVIDIA could do to future-proof their high-end gaming is put a bunch of like 3D stacked ASIC chips. So they have like a tessellation chip, a ray tracing chip, MSIA chip. If they add those things onto it so that they can say, hey, maybe AMD's cheaper and uses less energy, but you get free AA, free tessellation, free sharpening if you go with us and make it a GamesWorks package. I think that's NVIDIA's future. But AMD could do that as well. And yes, blokes, there's many more things besides just tessellation and all this other stuff that you could do with 3D stacked graphics cards. I really think there's a chance graphics cards are kind of going to max out at around 8,000 stream processors. If you look at it, the performance difference between the 2080 and the 2080 Ti is only about 20% anymore. When you consider the 2080 Super, and that's because it has more bandwidth. Most of the 2080 Ti's performance benefit over the 2080 is how much more bandwidth it has. It has a lot more bandwidth. So that means they added, think about it, right? Like 35% more stream processors with only like a 20% performance increase. That means it's starting to get diminishing returns, guys. There's a reason AMD has been on 4096 SPs for a while. It's not because they can't go higher. They can absolutely go higher. It's just not been in their best interest. So yeah, that's a thing to think about there. Let me make sure let me see here. So yeah, again, hold the tips. I do see someone tip me. I'll answer that in a second. Let's get through the rest of these questions quickly. I got a bunch more. Eomer writes in and he asks, many people have predicted that, let me put down have predicted that better and better APUs are coming in the future. Well, yes, that's a given. If we consider AMD's current 3950X setup, which for those who don't know, I'm sure everyone watching this does, but that's the 16 core, 4.7 gigahertz dual, triple chiplet, I guess, IO-Die and 2-core chiplet. Flagship coming out in a couple weeks, actually coming out of my birthday, November 19th, rumored, and replace all of the 7nm or some of it with VRAM and GPUs. Just what kind of gaming performance could be possible without a PCIe video card? So, I did one of my very first big popular videos was how soon will APUs get, or how powerful will APUs be in 5 years from now? So watch that. It's in my best videos. It's like one of the first best videos I put in that playlist on my channel. Right now a chiplet takes up 71 millimeters squared. So I would assume, but there's a little more room there, right? They could fit more. The 5500 die is 1536 SPs. So I think that's, how many is that? Is that 24? I'm going to say that's, let me see here. 1536 divided by 24. Yeah, that's 24 compute units for the 5500 5500, well, the full die, it sounds like the 5500 is a cut down die. And that's, I believe they said, what, like 150 millimeters squared. I bet they could almost fit that in there. So I think right now, if they made a chiplet GPU, they could probably afford to make it, 16 compute units or something like that. And then you could probably still fit, depending on what, and they would use a different IO die than they're using now, by the way. A different IO die off to the side to allow for maybe 4 or 8 gigabytes of HBM. I mean, you could get something about, if it actually had good HBM to make up for some bandwidth. Yeah, you could probably make this about as strong as the 5500 XT, whatever that's going to be, or a little stronger, maybe almost as strong as the 5600 XT. That's the rumored cut down Navi 10 with 1792 SPs. No proof that that's ever going to come out, but I always thought they should make that something around there. Something almost as strong as probably 20-30% weaker than a 5700. So I think they could make an APU right now if they really want to that fits on AM4 that's as strong as a 1660 Ti. I think that's how good it could get. And I think that would use, the whole chip could probably use like 150 watts. So yeah, that's about where we're at now. And with 6 nanometer, 7 nanometer EUV, and die shrinks coming. I know Cortex talked about 5 nanometer being the big thing because that'll free up space. I think, we'll get to something over twice as powerful by 2021. So we're looking at almost PlayStation 5 performance by 2022. So there, I hope that answers that question, Eomar. All right, let's get through these. John O'Shea writes in, just like you can on Patreon, and asks, WCCF Tech's laughable rumor about Ampere. What was that? So I thought that was hilarious. Here's my problem with some leaks. If you're going to do a leak with Ampere, and let's say WCCF actually had a source, don't just say more VRAM, less power usage, better ray tracing. Any idiot can guess that. You've got to tell us something extra that's interesting from your source. Something that's confirmed. You got to get a die size. When I did my Whispers of Navi, I had core count information from one of their design iterations. So that's news. I didn't just say Navi will have more, big Navi will have more performance than Vega. Any idiot can tell you that. And that's when I really hate. And I see that all the time on WCCF Tech and Red Gaming Tech. And I assume they're making it up half the time. But the problem is, if I can't tell the difference between you making it up and not, if it's literally as generic as it's going to be powerful, why even bother telling us? I have information about Z right now. A lot of you have noticed that on my board, it said Whispers of Z for a while. Guys, I know it's going to have HBM, probably for all of the professional market, and I suspect a lot of the consumer market. But that's not enough to do a video about, and anyone could guess that. But now I have a source telling me that about Z. There you go. Let's get through the rest of these. Dragonetti writes in and says, Intel's chip security problems. How long do you think buyers will deal with these Intel security issues in the current and future CPU architecture designs? These are going to keep popping up as long as there's Skylake-based architectures. Until they move on to a new design, this is a rotted architecture. If you have an architecture for 10 years straight, people will figure out weird weaknesses it has. This is not going away. There's another person who was an anonymous Linux, I forgot what it was. He works on Linux, who said that they see many more vulnerabilities on the way after the ones just reported. Guys, this is not over. It's going to keep coming as long as they have 14 nanometer Skylake. Another question by Dragonetti. What will be the impact of the current spending of billions of dollars in the semiconductor industries? I'll tell you what's going to happen. There is an arms race to get on the best nodes. TSMC is not slowing down. For the next few years, it really does seem like what TSMC said at Hot Chips is correct. Moore's Law isn't dead. It's not even sick. They seem to be innovating year over year out of nowhere. They figured it out. EOV is allowing them to go to 6 nanometer now. It's ramping up. 5 nanometer next year. And at this point, what's going to happen is you're going to have people like Apple. I think the next iPhone's 5 nanometer, and that might come out sooner than you think, guys. There's going to be a lot of competition on different nodes in the next 2 years, with some people paying up for the best node or the best one they can get. And some people like NVIDIA saying, like, we need giant dies. That's how we design our architecture. So we don't want 5 nanometer. NVIDIA may be on 12 nanometer right around when 5 nanometer products are coming out. Think about that. This is a new competition between nodes, especially with clock speeds not increasing anymore, where you're going to just see people paying top dollar for the exact node they need. Additionally, you're going to see some foundries start to do real business with ultra mature, outdated nodes. That's what's coming as well. And that's like that 1080 competitor coming from Xinjia in China right now, which might not come to consumer market, but that's just on 28 nanometer, but they're going to use HBM to make up for the extra power usage. You're going to start seeing weird things like that, like competitors popping up on 16 nanometer probably. So I don't know. That's what I expect. I expect a polarization where you have really expensive nodes and competition between 5, 6, 7 nanometer all at the same time. And then over here, you have dirt cheap nodes also competing because they're dirt cheap. Okay, 1 second here. How do I... Oh, I look way better over there. Okay. Just trying to not have this wash up my face too much here with how bright it is. All right, let's move on to the last ones. Any news on the Renoir APUs? Well, the leaks we have now suggest that it is 7 nanometer, not 12 nanometer FDX like I thought it might be. It's up to 8 cores, which is exciting. 8 core APUs. And that it supposedly the AM4 non-HBM versions have 12 compute units. Now, this is a rumor. I'm not confirming this. There's a lot of people that would say, why only 12 compute units? And to be honest, it would be because that's plenty for still using DDR4 or even LP DDR4X, which gets up to like 4,300 megahertz band. At that speed, you're basically DDR4s at 4,000 megahertz effective is about as fast as the early GDR5. Do you really want more than 12 compute units for that? Probably not. So it will be a hybrid Vega RDNA architecture is what I've read. And so that should place it about at, I'd say RX 570 performance, probably just shy of an RX 570 or like the 570D, the cut down RX 570. That is probably where these APUs will perform. And that is a big boost over what we have now, which is basically an RX 460 on AM4 APUs. So that's what I think you can look forward to, but it would not surprise me if there was stronger stuff. And I'm not sure what they'll name it, but it would make sense if it was just the 3500G, a 6-core APU with, say, 10 compute units, as strong as a 560. And then they had the 3600G and 3700G, and this was like a 150 watt RX 570 plus weaker 8-core for, let's say, I would guess they'd price it at 250, right? And this is your super APU. That would be pretty sick, wouldn't it? That's what's coming down the pipe right now, from what I can tell. All right, and finer reader mail question. Brent Ross writes in and he says, Lisa Soon in an interview with Fortune said the engineers name all products and she was worried about accidentally calling Ryzen Raisin on stage. Why are engineers so much better at naming things than marketing teams? Well, I don't know that's always true. I think some marketing conceived names are awesome, but I do think engineers just know what they're actually making. And a lot of the times the name of a product sells to the dorks first, right? The technically literate people, and they like the more technical names. And then when they see the people, people look up to, right? Like in my group, I'm one of the technical guys. What did Tom buy for his new phone? And people will ask me. They'll just buy what their friends bought who bought it first. So I think the name matters, but less than you might expect. And that's why engineering name products sound cooler to us, because we're more likely to be engineers if you're watching this, and more likely to be dorks. And I'm a dork. It's not an insult, who like technically named things. But I wouldn't always say it's named well. I mean, look at the name of Ice Lake. That's definitely an engineer name, and it's garbage. So don't always give the engineers credit, people. I want to be clear about that. And I'm an engineer, so I got to be honest about that. All right, let me check the candy one more time, and then we're almost to Q&A. Let's see. There's still candy outside. All right, I'm taking off the costume, guys. Gimmick's over. It's starting to make my hair itch. Ugh. Oh, right. Let's turn on another light here, too. Whoa, that focus went absolutely crazy, didn't it? Let's see if it fixes itself here. Oh, sorry for the blur. I'm not sure what I can really do about that because YouTube doesn't really let you adjust that. Can do this, try to pull it closer to my face. Let's see, maybe I can just pull this closer here and it'll look better. Oh, that looks like absolute garbage, doesn't it, people? Oh, it looks fine on that screen for me. All right, I think I fixed it. Let me just move it back down. All right, let's get through the rest of this. Sorry for the technical difficulties. This is a live stream. Do not kill me for it. Okay, so anyways, a small summarizing theme I want to do real quickly about, let's see, APU, about just a reminder for everyone before I get to live Q&A. Die Shrink's coming out tomorrow. New Die Shrink. If you support us at the $2 level, me and Dan are there talking about form factors a lot and conspiracy theories this season. The first one's about gaming laptops and the insistence of new college students to buy a gaming laptop over just a desktop. So I think that's a fun subject. Additionally, we will have, let me see, try to get in the center of the screen. Additionally, the next one will be about ITX motherboards, micro ATX, the future of motherboard form factors. And after that is Hate Online. And I did a deep dive on what's going on in subreddits and forums. And it's actually a very interesting discussion, I think. Let me just, again, get this so it's, there we go. And I notice a lot of people talk about the hate on subreddits right now and all of that type of stuff. Like they kind of drove Adord mad. He deleted his Reddit account, and I know they hate me, but I want to just kind of give a teaser for that episode because we really go into the history of like the backgrounds of some of these people hating on the Reddit. Long story short, what I will say is this: they seem to hate me, Cortex, Adored, and good old Gamer equally. I think they hate non-Apple fan too. Not trying to exclude him from including here. And what's weird is the downvotes on our videos posted there are about the same. And am I the only one who thinks that's insane? People would hate Chris as much as me. Like, I like myself quite a bit, but I can be an asshole. I admit it, everyone. And Chris kind of goes out of his way to be nice, doesn't he? So isn't that weird? He'll get the same downvote ratio. Same with Cortex, who just likes speculating about what's coming in the next 10 years. Like, what? And it's like, I'm not fanboying out. I'm being honest. Isn't it weird the downvote ratio is the same for all of these channels? And there's some interesting conclusions we come to looking at comment history for some of these people and stuff, and how it just seems like some people hate hearing other opinions. And I don't know. There's a lot more to say. But what I will say is this before you hear that episode: don't give up sharing our content, right? If you go and look on the Reddit, you'll see a video posted by someone about my, like one of my newer videos will still have like 40% upvotes. That means if 100 people saw it, 4 out of 10 people still went to the channel. Apparently 20% of my traffic still comes from Reddit posts. So don't be afraid to share my content. Just be aware that in the AMD subreddit specifically, there seems to be a brigade of NVIDIA astroturfers going around downvoting everything that has to do with Adored, me, Cortex, anyone giving opinions. They hate it when people give opinions. I suspect it's because they're mad people aren't listening to their opinion. I've seen people write entire reports on why me or Adored sucks, like a report, and it was insane. I'm like, oh my God, this guy spent hours on this. Like, don't give up sharing our stuff if you want to help out. You know, the best way to help out is Patreon, but if you're a hitchhiker, don't be afraid to share our content, and maybe just look for other subreddits, because man, the AMD subreddit's just so toxic right now. I mean, not even to me. So that's just a summarizing thing I want to say. I know there's a lot of hate. but there's a lot of people not hating. So don't be afraid to share and comment. And if you guys show up and upvote videos from like Good Old Gamer and talk nicely and downvote the people that are brigading all of these YouTube channels, it'll get better. Because there are a lot of people I've noticed now on that subreddit getting annoyed that you just can't even share YouTube videos anymore without things getting downvote bombed. Maybe just go there after a video adored posts and upvote it and help other people, right? Because there's a lot of people that don't like this. All right. I'll stop talking about this. Obviously, this is not what you came here to hear me talk about. Okay. But I did have to say it just because it seems like a thing to talk about. Okay. Let me see. Let me make sure I covered everything. Let's see. Yep. I did put that here. And then so at 50, 30, live Q and A. All right, I'm gonna pour a PBR. No fancy beers today. Just a great Midwestern beer. I like PBR. You guys can hate me all you want, but for a cheap beer, it's pretty damn good. I actually like it. So suck it. I'm not a hipster. Well, I am a hipster, but I don't like it because I'm a hipster. All right. Let me go up here. We got our first tip was sent a while back. It is from, and I'm sorry, Marco, for taking this long. Marco Sedentup asks, in my estimation, open power might be more successful than Risk 5. It is too early to tell, though. So what I can say at Hot Chips is when I asked, what's the big thing coming down the pipe? Everyone consistently, whether they worked at ARM, AMD, like a motherboard manufacturer, a chipset company. There's so many things involved in the silicon supply chain. They all said Risk-V. Anyone involved in actual CPU design said Risk-V. Everyone said it. So I would not doubt it. I do not think Cortex, for instance, underestimates how big Risk-V could be. And it should become big because people want an open standard. And I would say the same of open power. I don't know that that's not what I've been told, Marco, is what I would say. I've been told that Risk-V is the big thing from everyone I talk to. But open power certainly could be a thing as well. And IBM seemed to be a little cocky about some of their new open concepts. I think the future is open. So I'm sure it could have a place. I just haven't been told that specifically. All right, let me go down there. But maybe it's something I should look into. All right, let me see. All right, going down. Now is the Q&A time. So I can see the live posts here. What chair do I sit on? Oh, I don't know. It's one from Amazon. It's really comfortable. I have to look carefully because I kind of got back problems. Like I'm a decently athletic person, but if I sit in one type of chair for too many times in a row, if it's not a really comfortable chair, I'll just get back pain. So I don't remember, but it's not a gaming chair. I'll tell you that much. It's a more executive looking chair. And I don't like gaming looking products. I like the more professional, clean cut look. I love how the 5700 reference looks, not the 5700 XT, the one with a bent, someone hit it with a pipe. The 5700, I think, looks really nice. I love professional, clean looking cards. That's why I bought the Radeon 7 Special Edition, just because I'm like, dude, this is my favorite color and it looks so professional. All right, let me keep going. Kadam Ban Kanan writes in, thank you for the tip. People saying AMD 7 nanometer equals Intel 10 nanometer. I did a video on that. Go to my playlist, Forum Cop. I'm moving around my playlist a little more right now. I'm always updating them. Forum Cop and corrections. I have a 10 nanometer versus 7 nanometer. So on paper, Intel's 10 nanometer non-FinFET, or should I say real 10 nanometer? It's not a real 10 nanometer, though. None of these things are real, guys. They've never been real. Most of these haven't been real since the 90s. If you listen to one of the, I think we talked about it on Broken Silicon, like they all are cheating on what they call it, even Intel now. Intel's more real, but it's all marketing terms. Even Intel's is a marketing term, just so everyone here knows. I would say on paper, it should be about 10% worse than TSMC's 7 nanometer. It has its benefits, but it's clearly not panning out, and there's rumors they nerfed it. So I'd say in reality, it's probably a little worse than Global Foundries 12 nanometer FDX that just came out. And it might be worse than that. As far as we can tell, Intel's Ice Lake CPUs that they can't even get good yields on are like about as good as a 12 nanometer FinFET 3780U from AMD. Think about that, right? I mean, so what does that mean? It's not that much better than the 12 nanometer FinFET. I would say they're 10 nanometers in between. In reality, 7 nanometer and 12 nanometer FDX probably, but we don't know. And they're supposed to be making it better. Willow Cove will use a better, more robust 10 nanometer. We'll just have to see how that pans out, but it doesn't seem that impressive yet. It is better than their 14 nanometer at certain things, but only certain things. All right, let me keep going. Could we get a broken silicon or just a long chat about the future of Zen? Maybe Cortex? I know he wants to come on again this year, so maybe. I'm actually thinking of doing a really special Broken Silicon series. The fact that I want to talk about this with you guys now too. The year's almost over. Can you guys believe it? And what I'm thinking of doing is something like what Comedy Bang Bang does, where around Thanksgiving when Dan's in town, we just sit down, crack open some beers, and do a 11 years of being a PC gamer. So that would be this year, and do like a 4 or 5 part series that we upload as Broken Silicons over the holiday period to give you guys extra podcasts. That buys me some time to not have to do as many videos while I'm visiting family and while I'm busy with the holiday stuff. And it gives me a break. I'm tired, if you guys can't tell from all the stuff I've been doing. Like, oh my God. So if I look at my chart, right, there's only so many more things I can do. I plan on doing a Whispers of Z, hopefully. I just want more info. I plan on doing a video called The Coming Atom Wars, a look at Tremont versus Renoir and Rembrandt APUs and other Jaguar successors. That should be my other giant video. A few more smaller videos, maybe like an NVIDIA master plan, the history of naming things i9 and the biggest mistake Intel made. I'm just telling you guys my roadmap. And then there are like 3 or 4 other smaller videos I'm sure I will do. I'm sure I'll do reaction videos to products that come out. So that really leaves like a Whispers of Z, maybe a Whispers of Ampere, the Coming Atom Wars as my big videos. And then I want to do a quick multi-part series for December about next-gen consoles, but I still just haven't had the time to do it yet. But that's coming as well. So that leaves 4 or 5 more big videos, and then the year's over. So besides that, it's just going to probably be a lot more podcasts. So when you guys are driving, that's the idea, is maybe give you guys more podcasts near the end of the year. So when you're traveling to see family, you're never bored. Oh, I've been gaming for more than 10 years. I just wouldn't consider myself a PC gamer well, I've gamed on PC for 20 years, but I really got into PCs a decade ago, I would say. If I'm being honest with myself. Like, remember, I come from the generation where there was just one desktop in the house and the whole family shared it. And it was Windows XP. Oh, it was Windows 95. Like, I remember those days. And you didn't even really use the internet on it because the internet sucked. All right. Tip for all the vids, no question. Thank you, Sam MacArthur. Appreciate the tip. And the tips are very much appreciated. I do plan to upgrade within. I think I'm just going to upgrade around Thanksgiving, probably. Yeah, probably Thanksgiving or Christmas break. And I'm leaning towards a 3950X, unless Threadripper has a micro ATX motherboard with PCIe 4.0 and a under $1,000 option. Otherwise, I think the 3950X is clearly the best choice for me. Threadripper is cool and all, but let's be honest, 16 cores would be enough, and I game a lot, and I would appreciate the low latency. But if there's a 24-core Threadripper for 1,000, I don't think I can help myself. I'll just have to get that. As long as they make a motherboard that fits in my little case here. I'm writing an article for Cortex. You'll see what my case looks like. It's very small. So if I'm limited to ITX and micro ATX motherboards because they just don't make them for the next gen Threadripper before Christmas, guess I'm getting a 3950X, which again, it's like, oh, boo-hoo, only 16 cores. It's insane to think. When I built my current PC, I had to decide between a 6700K and a Broadwell E 6-core 6800. And the 6800K was 450. And now we have a 16-core clock 10% faster with more IPC. For only not even double the price. It's insane how much things have moved. All right. Second PBR. Oh, it's been a busy week, guys. Let me see. Any other questions here? Yeah, I drink fast. Deal with it, you know. I eat fast. I do everything fast. How do you think I get so many videos out? I'm eating fast. To make more videos, I'm drinking fast. Maybe a little too fast sometimes. Sometimes I have to delete a video because I'll go to edit it and I'm like, I was drunk. I'll just delete it. Will I build a beer cooled PC? That'd be funny, but no, that would rot. Yeah, TRX 40 might induce some latency. So I think 3950X, as much as I want a Threadripper, just makes sense. And then I can just use my dual channel memory, which, by the way, I have 3200 megahertz memory from 2016 that overclocks to 3600 megahertz. So I just put it at 3466 megahertz and turn down the timings. Like, that's perfect for a 3950X. And then if I need to upgrade RAM, I'll just get faster RAM once prices come down. And I do think prices for RAM will come down by mid next year. So I like this question. Seashesh sells seashells by the seashore. Asks, let's see. Oh crap. There it is. Well, I missed the thread keeps moving. I'm sorry. I look like an idiot right now. It's live, guys. I'm sorry I'm fucking up. There it is. C-Sesh writes in and asks, I can't believe you didn't dress your dog up for Halloween. Yeah, I'll bring her over here. Reese. No, come here. Up. What? Okay. Okay, hugs. What? I know there's people outside. But also Tom writes in and has a good question here. Another Tom, great name. Do you think AMD will just try to match the 2080 Ti? No, they're going to try to bury the 2080 Ti, but I think it makes sense for them to make a barely stronger 256-bit card. Don't you? Again, let me ask all of you. Don't you agree? Wouldn't that make sense? Just think about it. Wouldn't it make sense to make something between 64 and 52 compute units? So, 30% more performance. They just use faster RAM. And then because think about it, they could launch an 8 gigabyte card that has really fast RAM, but it's cheaper to manufacture than the 2080 Ti. And it has like a even cut down. It can compete with the 2080 Ti. They could price that at $549, and it could be 10% weaker, the cut down version, and then the full version could be $600 and match the 2080 Ti with 8 gigabytes of RAM. And then they could do a water cooled limited edition version with 16 gigabytes of RAM over a 256-bit bus that beats it by 10%, and they could sell that for $1,000, right? And then if it also can use HBM, then they can just take that card, put HBM on it, sell it to professional users. That's what I think they'll do. But they're going to make bigger cards. They're going to go to 80 compute units eventually. I'm sure of that. I just don't know when, right? They might decide to just do this stopgap series that's RDNA 1.0 or 1.5, which, again, I just don't get why it's not out yet. I'm sorry if I ramble a little. I'm drinking after all. But I think it really makes sense short term to make a cheap to manufacture 2080 Ti killer, and then make a limited edition 16 gigabyte version that matches the Titan RTX, and then they'll bring out the big guns. There's rumors, like the source I talked to said they're working on like some crazy powerful card, but it's not going to be cheap. But you can't just have that above it. They can't go 400, 1500. They want to go 400, 550, 600, and then like 650. Again, I would price the 2080 Ti killer at $679, $20 cheaper than the Radeon 7. That's what I would do if I were AMD, assuming the profits are there, which they will be. And then I would do maybe a Titan version with HBM for 1500. You know, that's kind of what I would do. But again, this is not me confirming that. What I'm confirming is they seem really cocky inside AMD from the people I've talked to that they're going to crush the 2080 Ti and that they want to do a 256-bit and HBM hybrid card. That's what they told me, but that's months ago. So, right, they can change their mind. All right, let's keep going. What else do we have? The next tip comes from Sishesh. This is for her, not for you. Well, 5 pounds buys a nice bone at Hy-Vee, Sishesh. So bones galore for Reese. And I do actually buy a bone for her next time I go grocery shopping when you guys tip me. I'm not kidding. Well, if you tip me for the bone, that is. If you tip me for something else, maybe not. All right, let me make sure I didn't miss any questions. Okay. Think I'm caught up on all the tips. Let's see what the hitchhikers have to say. I like this question. Dave McKee says, as a person on a fixed income, is waiting for the RX 5500 XT if you can't afford a RX 5700 worth it? Or should I just buy an RX 588 gigabyte now and count my blessings? So I don't know what the prices are in your country, but let's pull this shit up, yo. So let me see here. I haven't checked prices on Polaris for a while. RX 580. So if you can get a 570 for 120, that's a good deal, and it always will be. Polaris is not going to age badly, I don't think. 120 is a good deal for a 570 4 gigabyte. 140 to 150 is a good deal for a 580 8 gigabyte. And then let's see, what's a 590 going for right now? It's too much. I would not buy the 590. I don't think I've ever really recommended this card that well, unless there's been times where it's been cheap for 144 hertz 1080p gaming. It doesn't really have enough bandwidth for 4K though, over a 580. So, I think a 570 on eBay for $80 is a steal and will remain. No, there's no, like, come on. In 2 years, are you going to look back and say, I regretted paying $80 for that 570? Probably not. So I think you just buy that now. If you're on, there's nothing coming that's going to beat that price performance. I mean, even the 5500's a 4 gigabyte card, it looks like, that is as strong as a 590, but they're going to charge like 120. So that's only going to be like 30-40% stronger than an $80 used 570. So I guess I'll say this. I don't really recommend buying new 570s anymore unless they're dirt cheap and come with a game you want, which some might. But I would just, I mean, man, $80, $70 570s on eBay. Come on. You got that's my recommendation. Get that. Get a $90 1600, the ultimate budget rig. Come on. You got better than PS4, not PS5, PS4 performance. You could build a budget rig for $300. That's what you want to do. If you're really, and I mean, if you're really on a budget, if you really are. If you're not, the 5700 is $300. I reviewed one. It's as strong as a Vega 64 overclocked, about almost. My Vega 64 seems to be a golden sample, actually. That's almost as strong as my Radeon 7. But I mean, the 5700 at $300 with Borderlands 3, which is a great game, is a fantastic deal. So if you can push the budget, I think 5700. I've always liked that card. Everyone gives the 5700 XT credit, but it's like 5700 XT, even at launch, was 15% more expensive for what? 15% more performance? It wasn't better price performance. I don't know. 5700 is underrated. Why are chiplet-based GPUs difficult to make? So I'm not a hardware engineer, at least not for computers. My understanding is that they just have a hard time masking it in the software. And AMD said this publicly before. The only way a chiplet GPU works is if it appears in the OS as a normal GPU. And if you think about it, CPUs don't have that problem, right? Do they? Forever, you've been able to have dual socket Xeon systems that game fine because they're looking at multiple cores and threads and they're allocating them as needed, even if Windows is terrible at it. That's what's going on. So when you have a chiplet GPU, it's hard to do that without it allocating resources incorrectly. That's why they would have to do it so that the software can only see it as a monolithic die. And I guess that's just hard. I know that's not a technical answer, but keep in mind, I'm not adored when it comes to some of the technical stuff. It's more of a macro level person. You know, as dumb as it sounds, I'm more of a big picture guy. But that is my understanding, is that they just can't get it to work to a satisfactory level. Will they eventually? Maybe. And this is something Adored's talked about before that I think is a good idea. I think it would make a lot of sense to at least divide up the graphics cards into chiplets for I/O and chiplets for the graphics core. So you could take a 256-bit I/O and put that on a 5700, right? But then let's say the top die, the top bin die, that 5700 XT special edition that's 10 teraflops from AMD, that golden edition that was $500 for whatever at launch, or is it $450? I don't remember. That version, maybe that would have made sense to put an HBM I/O die on it. So I think there's still room for chiplets with graphics cards, even if they can't put multiple GPU chiplets. At least I hope so. But it just seems like it's just not that simple. OSs have been dealing with multiple chip processors before we even had chiplets. We had dual Xeon builds and Opteron builds. But this is just a whole other beast. That's just not how games are written. That's my understanding, right? Feel free to correct me, people. This is a common question, but you tip me. Preston Morton tips and asks 3800X, 3900X, or 3950X for streaming and gaming. Well, if you're, I gotta say, it depends what your time scale is. The reason I would go with a 3950X is because, and you'll see this in my Cortex article I'm writing, I will be doing research with 20 tabs open, mining, because that's what heats my house. I have a mining rig over there, mining with my Radeon 7 and rendering a video at the same time. Doing all those things at once, 16 cores really will help. It really will. And you have to understand, when you do a lot of video editing and you're someone like me who actually has a very busy, and I don't want to say important because it sounds like I'm an asshole, but like it is an important job. I am an account manager. My job is to bring business to a company. I'm flying to Minneapolis in a couple weeks to meet with customers and try to get them to get like a $500,000 contract. Like I have an in-demand job that is important. And so when I take time to and I'm not bragging, I know I look like a dick right now, I'm sorry. But when I have time to make a video, I have 8 hours on a weekend and that's it. And if I don't get the video done, it's not coming out on time. So I have all my files where I want them to be, and upgrading a PC at this stage of my life is a big deal. So getting a 3950X to future-proof myself is important. Is that important for you? If it's not, 3800X makes sense. And in fact, since the socket's compatible, eventually you can upgrade to a stronger processor, right? I would recommend the 3700X though, personally. If you are willing to upgrade the CPU, which isn't that hard, right? Like I could put up with that. Maybe I will. Maybe I'll upgrade the 3950X to a Zen 3 processor next year. Who knows? Right? Let's say I have the 3950, a 3700X in there. It's not that hard to pull it out, put something in stronger in a few years. But upgrading motherboard platforms is a big problem for me. So I want to get a 3950X to make sure I don't need to upgrade motherboards for, I don't know, at least a few years, because all my files are where I want them to be. And think about that. When I build my PC this winter, that's a week potentially of me not making videos. And I know you're saying it's not that hard to build a PC. Yeah, it takes me an hour to build a PC, guys. I know. But what if something goes wrong? What if one of the components doesn't work? That's a lot of stress. And it's going to be about a week of adjusting to moving my files around to exactly where I want them to be. Because again, how do I get out news stories so quickly? News story breaks. I see it. All my files are where I want to be. Boom, film, edit, upload, done. And I got it streamlined so it's quick. That's so important for me. So future proofing matters. But for you, 3700X is great for gaming now, to answer your actual question. Stop talking about myself. 3700X is what I would recommend. You can upgrade in the future. But if future proofing matters to you, 3900X. And here's why. I want 16 cores because, again, I'm rendering, mining, and have 20 tabs open at the same time. I actually think I do need the 16 cores, but I don't think most people, and be honest, like, you're not doing that type of stuff. 12 cores is more than enough. For future proofing, a 3900X is fantastic because the consoles will have 8 cores, but the PS5 will have a backup processor that's ARM for background tasks. So you basically have a backup x86 quad core for streaming and background tasks. So 3900X is what I recommend for future proofing. 3700X if you're building for now and you're willing to upgrade in the future, right? But if you're going to make use of it now, the 3900X is just better. Like, you'll just stream with no problem. So if you have the money, I mean, come on, it's 12 cores for $500. They used to cost you $2,000. Okay, let me keep going. Thought there was another tip. Okay, there we go. And I'll get to the other tip. Don't worry. Lippy A writes in, because CSESH is making me laugh. Oh, any plan? Oh, he's tipping to tell CSESH you're funny. Very nice. Any plans for an IT security podcast or similar? Interesting to see how companies are reacting. Well, I mean, did you listen to the network engineer episode? That was a very popular episode in the free feeds for the podcast RSS. Listen to that. And if you want that, I mean, typically the suggestions are made on Patreon or in the Discord if you're a premium member. If you're on the Discord, make that suggestion. I'll bring him back in. But give me a specific subject and I'll talk to him about it ahead of time. Because I like these people and I plan to have the server engineer on again. But I want him to deal. He says he wants to do another episode at the end of this year once he's done dealing with more of Intel security problems. So I want to do another episode just about all of it. What does he have to deal with now? I don't want to like just bring him on. So give me a specific subject in IT security and dumb it down a little because I'm not, a hardware engineer, and I'll reach out to him and see if we can do it. All right. Arcane 311 writes in, I have a 2400G upgrading here soon. My choices: Ryzen 2600 for 120 or 2700 for 170, or just go all out for their 3600. Well, what I would say, let me think for a second here while I pour more alcohol. It depends what you're doing. I personally have never really recommended the 2600 because the 1600 is cheaper. If you can get a 1600 for $80, I just get that. If $40 matters to, yeah. So let me put it this way. This is a very good way to put it, I think. So you're looking at a 2600, a 2700. If you're looking at 120 to 170, that's a $50 difference. Clearly, $50 matters to you. You're not made of money. I understand. But if money matters to you, $50 cheaper than that is almost a 1600. So just get a 1600 6-core. However, if you're willing to stretch your budget, get the 2700, which has 2 more cores. I think that's your answer, right? Does $50 matter? And this is what I always said in the Tom's Hardware forums, and people would almost never listen to me. They'd be like, I have a graphics card for a 150. I'm getting a 650 Ti. And I would say, well, the 7770 is $40 cheaper and 95%, like 90% is strong. So save $30 and get a 7770. And he's like, no, that's not my budget. And I said, oh, you can spend $30 more? Pay 180 and get a 7850. That's like twice as strong. And he'd say, no, that's my limit. What is it? Does $30 matter to you or not? Come on. Don't be an asshole. So that's my answer. Does $50 matter to you or not? If it does, get a 1600, assuming it's that cheap wherever you live. Does it not? Well, stretch your budget to the 2700. And in fact, I would kind of recommend going just to the 3600 because it games as well as an 8700K, or at least pretty close. Come on, man. Just get the 3600 if this is a gaming build. You can afford probably the extra $80. If you can't, get a 1600. That's why I always like min-maxing so much. And think about it this way too. The difference between a 1600 and a 3600 is what, like $120? So that's the difference between what? I'm a 590 and a 3700. I mean a 5700. Which would you rather have? A 1600 and a 5700 or a 3600 and a 590? One of them's over 50% stronger. And as long as you're 60 hertz gaming, I can promise you that combo is better. That's my advice. All right, I talked long enough. Let's keep going down the list. Nope. Preston Morton writes in and says, I appreciate you, dude. That's why I support you. Thank you, Preston. I do it because I enjoy it a lot. It's really not for the money. Although the money allows me to start paying Dan a little bit. And pretty soon, I'm a little surprised, actually, we're not to my Patreon goal of 384 yet. We hit 64. And if you notice, my Patreon goals are not timid. It's like, no, to go to the next level, which now I have a 4K 1000 hertz camera, which I'm not using now. Unfortunately, for streaming on YouTube, I have to use my shitty camera. Sorry, guys. I'll work on that, though. And all of the better audio equipment, it costs a lot more. The next level, once we get to 384, I think I'll start paying the audio engineer and stuff, and then he'll stay on, and then he'll make things better. And then past that, I plan on doing another giant increase to like the HBM level. And once we hit that, I can have a staff that makes the quality consistently high. And then once you get above that, I can just do this as my job. So that's why I do this, because I enjoy it. It's certainly, I guess I sound like a dick again. It's certainly not for the money right now, is what I'm saying. Although the money is allowing me to start throwing some scraps to people helping me out. And also keep this in mind, right? It costs money to host the RSS feeds. It costs money to host my website that advertises at least the people helping me do these videos, which is important if you think about it. Like, I have to give them something in return for doing this. So yeah, next time I think I'm going to have to use my nicer camera because this just looks so much worse. Any news on Arcturus? Nothing besides the last stuff I said. I missed an earlier tip. Let's see. Appreciate you. I answered that question. I answered the 3950X question. I answered the chiplet question. Dr. Forbin loves the dog. Do you need a bone too? Okay. I'm seeing there's a lot of joke ones here. Is that what you're talking about? Okay. Sorry I missed those. I hope that's what you mean. RTX on writes in and says, after watching some of your videos, they decided to jump in the AMD boat. Don't jump in the AMD boat, though. I do want to be clear about that, right? It's not the AMD boat. It's the boat of good purchasing. I'm only recommending AMD right now because it's what I think is the best. I have an Intel laptop I just bought because I think Whiskey Lake was better than the AMD laptops out at the moment. And I have a 6700K still. And for the most part, it's not slowing me down. As a 17-year-old who likes hardware, what job do you recommend for the future? I just had a friend switch from trying to become a lawyer or thinking he wanted to be a lawyer to becoming a programmer. So there's always that. Make sure you actually like programming, which programming can be fun. But, there's that. In terms of hardware engineer, I'm not really the right person to ask about that. To be honest, I went into mechanical engineering to build guns, and then I got into the automotive industry. I also took a lot of international classes, and I like, news and politics way more than I thought I would when I was younger. Well, I've always liked politics, but so I did not go down the path of computer engineer on purpose. I'm not a computer engineer, but I do think I'm good at connecting the dots, and I think I'm good at looking at a few things and making a decision. And I think that's what makes me a technology pundit right now. Is I'm just, I just couldn't put up with it anymore, right? I couldn't put up with some of the stuff I was seeing some of these channels say, so I made my own channel. It's so far it's worked out, huh? What do I think of the SIG P226? I mean, it's a different gun. It's a decent gun. There's a lot to break down on what makes a good gun, just like a good computer. It's so many different components. What are you using it for? There's a lot of 9mm pistols too, and 45 and 40 caliber pistols. So there's a lot to. There's so much to consider when doing a gun, buying a gun. Shit. That's what happens after 1.5 PBRs, apparently. Do I have anything to say about 2020 elections? Yeah, but I'm not going to say it here. Yes, I do. I have a political podcast, Flyover States. Right? Subscribe to Flyover States. If you want a taster of what Flyover States is, in my best videos, I believe I have a video called The Fallacy of Google Algorithms. Watch that video. It's one of my best ones, even though it's not popular. And the second half is a giant ad for Flyover States. Listen to that. And that has its own Patreon with only 5 supporters, but it's just enough to get me to put out a podcast about every month. I'm not sure what the next episode will be on. The last one was on Trump's impeachment. So if you want to know what I think about that, you can go there. Although I try to be objective, right? I don't tell you if I think he should be impeached. I just try to tell you what I think's happening. Because I don't want to be on the left or the right with a political podcast. I just want to make people think more. Don't assume I'm left or right either. You have no idea. All right. Also, let's see. Have a Sandy Bridge 2600 and a 580. It runs like a champ with an SSD. Yeah, and depending on the games you play, it's fine. My 6700's fine. It runs all games above 100 hertz. But when I edit now, it's starting to become a problem. And it's not about the price or the product. There's way better processors than what I have now, and I have the money to buy them. It's about time to take down my rig and build something new. And I don't think I'll have the time till Christmas break, and that's when I'll do the 3950X build. And I'm sure I'll do a bunch of build videos. Maybe I'll do a live stream where I'm just sitting there building it in front of you guys. Can't decide if to answer this question. I'm answering it. I don't care. If a vagina is a color, is that good? A color? Everything's a color. That's good news if that vagina is a color. It's also good news if you are a color. There. All right. Also, Drita Full wrote in and said, have a beer on me. So I'll get one more beer. I'm having fun still. And I'm making some slow roasted beef brisket for Halloween right now. So that shouldn't be done for another hour. So I'll get another beer. All right. Happy Halloween to me. A tip for a beer. Although that was in some foreign currency, so might as well be Monopoly money. It's a joke, by the way. I don't actually think it's Monopoly money. Let me see. What is this? 150 NOK to USD. Oh, Norwegian. Okay. Well, I do like Norway quite a bit, actually. So I appreciate your Norwegian funny money quite a bit, Drita Full. Thank you. Should I be advertising in Norway? Is this an untapped market for my channel? You guys all probably speak English, right? Maybe I should do that. Now, you guys probably think I'm an asshole for saying you guys speak English, but it's like a lot of French people don't speak English because French is a common language. A lot of Spanish people don't because a lot of people speak Spanish. Um, but if you're Norwegian, you gotta learn English. If you're Dutch, you gotta learn English. If you're, Portuguese, you probably should learn English. All right, that's enough of me putting my foot in my mouth. Yeah, I mean, I speak French too, or at least je parle un peu de français, mais il était 10, 11 since j'étudie français. I don't know. It's been a while. I took 5 years of French, and I do love the language. One of the first things I'll do, by the way, if I quit my job to do this channel, is just master French and Portuguese because I love those languages. Maybe Italian too. If I learn Portuguese, Italian should be pretty easy. I tried, right? How was my French? I tried. Show us your memes. I used to troll a lot. Thank you, Allie Robertson. This is a new Patreon supporter. I used to troll a lot on WCCF Tech, and you'll see in my videos, I'll trickle memes in every now and then. You'll see them. Like that Intel one with the chart where he says, more IPC, more cores, power consumption, and then he points to that. Like that's the Intel solution, more power consumption. Like that was a meme I made on WCCF years ago. And again, it's funny because I have only Intel processors, and people think I'm a... C'est quoi ton opinion sur risque V? Risque V, right? Risque V. Is that how you would say that in French? It's like an American term, so you say whatever you want, right? And we already answered your question. Go back, Brian Ho. I already answered that question in English, though, unfortunately. Dude, why are there Europeans watching me right now? It's like really late for you guys, isn't it? Max Sampla says, I love Forum Cop. I agree. There's something happened after the SMT4 debacle where I was like, I need to take a step back and start doing videos for me. And when was the last time I actually went into the WCCF comments or Tom's Hardware forums and actually looked around at what people are talking about? What are people on the street saying? And that's where the idea for Forum Cop came from. I'm going to keep doing those. They're not overwhelmingly popular. Obviously, they're not as popular as a giant Intel leak or an opinion video, but they're fun. And everyone who watches Forum Cop seems to love them. Dobra says 2 a.m. in Romania. My sleeping schedule's fucked. Yeah, I know what you mean. I went to bed early last night and then couldn't sleep. That was so cool. I went to bed at like 10 or 11 p.m., which is way earlier than I normally go. And I just couldn't sleep till like 3. It sucked. I like this question, and it's a tip, so I'm going to answer it. Andy's Tech Time, which sounds like another channel, writes in and says, how much of an upgrade will Zen 3 be over Zen 1? Oh, huge. Enormous for desktop experience. I only game at 60 hertz. Well, I mean, how much do you care about boot up time? How much do you care about latency? I've really, really, really overclocked parts of my motherboard and my cache. I run my processor at 4.3 gigahertz, but the cache is highly overclocked and the FCLK bus is overclocked. I know I said that wrong. Don't hate me. I'm drinking. Don't hate me if I get the terms wrong. And so, like opening folders, it feels like the folder almost opens before I open it. I've had SSDs in RAID since 3-4 years ago. Like latency matters to me. I like the snappiness factor. So the difference between Zen 3 and Zen 1 should be pretty profound. I mean, not only does Zen 2 have less latency, but Zen 3 is completely redesigning the CCX for low latency. So it's probably going to be a pretty big upgrade, actually. And I hope they bring it to desktop. I know there's some rumors they might not, but I don't know. 7 nanometer EUV shouldn't be that much more expensive. I'd be surprised if they didn't bring something from Zen 3 to desktop. And if they do, I mean, I expect some pretty big upgrades. I mean, I expect at least a 10% IPC upgrade and lower latency. So for gaming, what would be really funny is the one thing I'll admit I got wrong in my Whispers of Zen 3 video is if Zen 3, I thought it was all about server and laptop, and then it ended up being the best gaming architecture. But again, speculation, not saying that's what's going to happen. But I mean, think about it. Zen 2 is like a 15% IPC. No, it's like a 20% IPC increase over Zen 1. And then depending on the app, keep in mind in servers, Zen 2 is like 40% better for some applications. And then Zen 3, another 10% over that. I mean, you're looking at 50% and higher clock speeds. So higher clock speeds than Zen 2. So we could get to like 4.9 gigahertz and 30% higher, 40% higher. Yeah, Zen 3 is going to be way stronger than Zen 1. That's your answer. Is it worth it to you? I don't know. What I will say is the next gen consoles, the more I think about it, probably use a hybrid Zen 2 3 architecture that has 8 cores. So if you have a 1600, it might be worth considering an 8-core Zen 3 at the end of next year. Until then, you'll be fine, though. My God, don't rush to upgrade if you only game at 60 hertz. But the performance upgrade will be there pretty soon. All right, let's move on. Intel Z is actually pronounced times Z. Times Z? Is it really called times E? Can anyone else verify that from JH Brett here? Is that really how you're supposed to pronounce it? Come on, guys. I'm so tired of this with the names and how I pronounce them. There's so many bullshit names in PC hardware. Come on. This is the problem I have where it's like, does this guy really not get x86? No, I don't. I don't get why it's a big deal. I don't. See, I bet there's a lot of comments to all of this here. Let's see what happens. Grant Patterson says English is a bastardization of Anglais, Celt, French, German, Italian, Egyptian. It's the most bastardized language in the world. That's correct. There's people that say English is a hard language, but it's like, I mean, if you're European, right, it's not easy to learn English necessarily for any individual language, but I mean, there's a lot of connections between French and German. Like the grammar of German makes up English and the nouns of French make up English. And then a lot of those are shared between Spanish, Italian, Portuguese, and all the other stuff around there. And then there's also a lot of Scandinavian Viking influences in English. It actually kind of works as a good bridge language for the Western world, to be honest. Like English makes a lot of sense for everyone to learn. Says the stupid American, right? Who tells everyone to learn English. Keop 901 tip. Thank you for the tip. Looks like you're getting lots of bones soon, Reese. Let's see if I'm getting any shit here. I said a lot of dumb stuff just now. Am I still going to make my next gen console video? You know, I mean, I want to, but I made them. You can go back to like my early channel. I made a few videos about them and I kind of stand by most of what I said back then. That's why I've hesitated to make a video. Is it's like, am I going to do a video on a giant Golden Cove leak or a video on the PS5 when I think my early information was good last year? I think I'm just going to do a Golden Cove video. So I want to do a video about next gen, a multi-part series, at least 3 parts before the end of the year. And I'll probably bank them for Christmas time. But I want that dump of info. And I feel like we're going to get it in a month. I feel like we're going to get that PS5 and Xbox dump. What I'll tell you right now is they're both going to be stronger than people expect. I think the PS5 might be stronger, but have a weaker CPU as usual. And that the PS5 specifically will have storage so fast that I worry about PC gaming for the next 2 years. And I know people call me a fanboy and stuff, but if they use Infinity Fabric for like a 4 gigabyte per second PCIe SSD, like not even PCIe, right? Like what if they use a custom soldered on fabric for like an insanely fast storage unit? And the rumor is they'll use like 100 gigabytes of it for like a high bandwidth cache RAM, like 100 gigabytes of RAM effectively. I don't know, guys. They could make games that render in different ways than we're used to now. And this is something me and Dan talk about a lot in the new Die Shrinks too, is just like the way games are rendered and loaded might change. So I worry that PCs might actually have to catch up to console for the next 2 years. And I know people hate me now for saying that type of stuff, but you know, keep in mind, I have no problem with console gaming, never have. All right, let me scroll down here. See, how much longer will I do this? I think maybe if it goes more than 2 hours, YouTube acts funky. So I'm probably going to cut this off in 15 minutes. And that should be about when I need to start making the rest of my beef brisket dinner. Yeah, I think 15 more minutes. I'm going to cut this off before 2 hours because it caused all types of problems when this went over 2 hours last time, or the other time it did. So you got 15 minutes to ask questions, people. Let me actually see what people are saying in the streets here. Just became a Flyover States Patreon. CYF not the best. It's an interesting name. I hope you enjoy it, right? The problem with Flyover States was it only had a few Patreon members. So it's like it wasn't enough to host the servers. With Broken Silicon, the support I got immediately paid for permanent hosting and all this other stuff. The more support on Flyover States will ensure I keep doing videos. But I have to take my time. I don't let anyone else edit Flyover States. I edit it because every word I say has to be perfect because it's politics. So you got to be careful because you got to say exactly what you're trying to say. And I certainly put my foot in my mouth on this channel sometimes without trying to. When it comes to politics, I just think you got to take it more seriously. So I appreciate the support. I plan to get a permanent hosting soon, though. It has just enough support where I think I'll do that. Will I get Dan in a video soon? Probably, honestly, guys. Probably he'll show up soon. No confirmation, though. He's much shyer than me, right? I think that's obvious. Hope you guys like Dan. I think you need some even-keeled person to not talk constantly. Give me 1 second. Let me check the candy. Candy cam time. Yeah, it's out. All right. No, they're not. No, they're not. Yeah, I had to reload the candy. This is probably out for a little bit there. Oops. More candy for me. All right, let me see. Has there been any tips since I've been gone? No. Okay. Oh, well, you guys are arguing about languages. I like this question. Daniel Strong writes in and says, what should I choose as my engineering specialization? Chemical, materials, or mechanical? Well, which do you find most interesting? I found mechanical interesting from the get-go. I was drawing guns, not as a crazy person, but actually designing the operating gas mechanisms in high school. Like I love designing machine guns. Like how could you organize a magazine? Like what's the most interesting way you could have a spring move bullets around in a direction, you know, that type of stuff. Mechanical. I've always been a mechanical person. I like working with my hands. I have a motorcycle that I've upgraded. I've always been a mechanical person. So if you're hands-on, if you think in a concrete, logical way, I think mechanical's for you. If you're more abstract, if you're exceptionally good at math and logic, I think chemical is what you want to go with. Now, materials is kind of in the middle. Materials is for a lot of more creative. It's in the middle. Are you creative, mathematical person that wants to touch things every now and then? Material science really, I wasn't that great at the materials class. Well, I thought my teacher kind of sucked, to be honest, but can't blame him completely. It is a lot of abstract math. Of course, chemical is too. I don't know. Do you find material science very interesting? Because I think you got to have a passion for it. But if you do, choose materials. If not, chemicals, the more math, science over here. Mechanicals for people working with their hands, Now, let me see what else we got here. The day the U.S. gets rid of poverty and Jesus, you'll be the real richer country in the world. You should go to the north side of Paris because that ain't looking good. Looks worse than the south side of Chicago. So, you wake me up when any country has no poverty, and then tell me when that country has more than like 5 million people living in it. It's like, oh, socialism works in Norway. No offense, but yeah, you don't have a lot of people and they're all white. It's very hard to wrangle 400 million people from all over the world and not have them all freak out, So I will give you that opinion there. Like this idea of eliminating poverty. Also, actually, let me say this too. It's a very optimistic thing. If you think about it, I wonder what you guys think. Type right now. What do you think the extreme poverty level was in 1900? So right, the year not 1900. Type it right now. Anyone here? Guess. Don't look it up. 1900. What do you think it was? Because this is the poverty level where what extreme poverty means is you either don't have enough shelter, food, or I believe there was another thing, right? And it means basically something is lacking. Like you either don't have food or you don't have shelter. It's like, nope. Everyone looking here, 90%. It was 90% extreme poverty in 1900. 90% of the world didn't have enough food or shelter. 90%. By 2000, I believe, and this is where I'm guessing, I don't remember the exact statistic, but it was like 50% between like around the 80s, 90s, early 2000s. We're at like 5% now. If you were to go back in time to the 1800s and tell them 95% of the world has enough food and shelter, and again, there's people starving all over the world, but I'm saying not enough food to survive. I'm saying if you told that to people in the 1800s, they would say we've already solved it. They would say we've already solved world hunger. By 1800 standards, we've solved world hunger. Now, there's still lots of people starving. There's still lots of people skinny, but it's different. And this idea, right? Guys got to remember that, not to get political here, that by 1800 standards, we've achieved world peace. The wars we have now don't even come close to what used to happen. Not even close. So I just want to throw that out there for people that complain, We're getting there, guys. All right, enough politics. And I know some of those statistics were a little wrong. Pretty confident on the 1900 one, though. Problem is greed and corruption. Well, all humans have greed, so that's never going to be solved. 70 million poor people in the USA live better than like the median of many countries. Like, what's your point? Any chance for AMD GPUs working on G-Sync? No. I think the answer is no. Honestly. Let me write that down too, because that might be a good last question there. I think zero chance of that. I think NVIDIA would never do that. I really don't have much else to say there. Make sure I didn't miss any other tips. Just so you guys know, I only record Flyover States sober, and I look up all my facts before I do an episode. I don't want any shit here for what I just said. I got political for a second because you guys were clearly asking for it. Preston Morton writes in, why did Cyrix fail? What's the ideal budget monitor? Well, I'm going to be honest about one thing. Cyrix is a bit before my time. I just have to be honest. Before Nahelm, or honestly before Athlon, I don't know that much. And I'm going to be very upfront about that. But what's the ideal budget monitor? That's a hard question for me to answer right now. Honestly, this is a very hard question. Actually, let me write that down to G-Sync and budget monitors. Because I feel like monitors have completely stagnated over the past 3 years. And I mean completely and utterly stagnated. Like so let's put it this way. Dan got a Samsung. It's a Korean model, but he ordered it on eBay, right? And it came with a converter for the US outlet. Dan from Broken Silicon got a 4K 5 millisecond delay 60 hertz monitor 7 years ago. 7 for $600. I know $600 is a lot of money, but it's lasted him that long. Come on. What's happening? For that price, you should be able to get a 4K 120 hertz monitor now, and you can't. This is what stagnation looks like. So that's why it's hard for me to recommend any monitors anymore. I've had the same $200 144 hertz monitor for 4 years. What is happening? Why can't I upgrade to like a 144 hertz 4K? Why? And it's because gamers keep buying stupid shit. Like, gamers keep buying these monitors that are worse than my TV, and they pay more than what my TV cost, and it's insane. And I don't know what to do about it. So when it comes to getting a good budget monitor, they make 4K monitors for $200 that are 60 hertz. Get a 4K FreeSync 60 hertz monitor for $200, or at least they were last year. I don't know if they still are. Maybe the prices have gone up. That's what I recommend. Or high refresh rate 1080 for under 200. That's my opinion. Now, if you want to go ultra budget, you can usually get a 76 hertz 1080p monitor for about $100. Just do your research, make sure there's not problems with it or any color issues. That's my recommendation. So at $100, 76 hertz FreeSync 1080p for about $200. I don't know. I have a 144 hertz monitor, but maybe you could get at this point a 165 hertz 1080p monitor. If it's just for gaming, you can get some 165 hertz 1440p monitors for about $200 right now. And in fact, there's now 20-inch 1800p monitors on eBay. Look it up. So I don't know how big your desk is. If you have a tiny desk and you want a small monitor, look for those 1800p 60 hertz monitors, because that's a good compromise between 1080p and 4K, as long as you're not using a console. But if you are, that's why I recommend 1080p or 4K. 4K, the consoles will support it in the future. All of your devices support it. Every Chrome stick, whatever you put in that monitor, will support 4K. It might not support 1440p. And so just go 4K 60. But if you want a high refresh rate, don't you want a high refresh rate? I would just go with 1080p then, unless you can get a 1440p for about the same price, which sometimes you can. That's why I recommend 1080p or 4K. I feel like, would you want like my PC has no problem maxing out 144 hertz 1080p in every game. And wouldn't you be annoyed if you got a 1440p 144 hertz and you're like $400 graphics card couldn't do half that on high settings? I mean, usually it can, but that's what you think about. So that is my opinion to this day, is 4K 60 or 1080p 144 or higher. And if you can get a 1440p that's around the price of the 1080, it's a good deal. All right. 5 minutes. I'm cutting this off before 2 hours. I have to. I'm already getting way too political and loopy. 5700 XT plus new monitor now, or just RX 570 with old 1080 60. and then upgrade in 2 years? Well, not Brick. This is what I'm going to keep saying. If you can afford to wait to upgrade right now, do it if you're happy. If not, prices have been better now than they have been for the past 2 years, so upgrade. But things are going to keep getting crazy. Think about it. In 2016, I had to choose between a 6800K or a 6700. 4 or 6 cores, and the 6 core was $450 with a $300 motherboard. It was a $400 motherboard. Think about that. In 2017, I could get an 8 core for the same price. In 2018, I get an 8 core for $300, the price of my 6700K. In 2019, I'll be able to you can get a 12 core for the price of what I was considering a 6 core in 2016. What's going to happen in 2020? Probably better gaming Zen 3. What's going to happen in 2021? Probably some 20 or 24 core AMD fighting some Golden Cove or Willow Cove, Intel processor that has a shit ton of cores and is at 5 gigahertz. Things are not slowing down. And then after 2021, 2022, 3D stacking, RISC-V. There's all this on, L4 cache and the gigabytes. This is what's coming. If you can afford to wait and you're happy, wait. If you can't, there's never been a better time to upgrade. There's never going to be a better time to upgrade for the next 5 years, I think. And that's different. People say that's how it's always been. No, it isn't. That is not how it's always been. If you bought Sandy Bridge, you haven't needed to upgrade since. Probably, if you're gaming at 60 hertz. But things are changing now, where things are innovating again. We've figured out Moore's Law. We're moving on to other ways of increasing performance, and that is how we are scaling it. So, no, 5700 XT and a new monitor now. I would say hold off on the monitor because I think the OLEDs are going to get cheap soon. I would hold off on that monitor, or at least I wouldn't go all out. If you're going to get a new monitor, get like a Korean or Chinese one for $200. Like I said, like 165 hertz, 1440p. As long as you don't need color accuracy, they're usually pretty terrible at color accuracy. But I have one, and the picture quality is great. That's what I would recommend. And then get a 5700 or 5700 XT. But if you want to wait 2 years and you're happy, just wait. Especially consider the next gen consoles coming out and making a lot of PCs look stupid and stuff. If you wait till 2021, we're probably gonna have double the performance. So it's gonna help to wait till after the consoles come out. Remember what came out around the PS3's launch? Just like wildly better stuff. All right. Any last minute questions? I see a tip here. Eskamonster says great advice. Thank you. I'm looking at the last things I've scrolled up here. A collab with Dan, Paul, and Cortex for a mega podcast. I don't know about a single mega podcast, but again, guys, I'm working on something for the end of year series, 11 years of being a PC gamer. You can imagine who I might collaborate with for that. Just get ready for that. Collab with Lisa. Adored doesn't like doing podcasts. Correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think he's ever been on another podcast, and he's told me he doesn't want to do them. Also, I reached out to Ashley Webb, who is Sashley Cap. She has her own blog that I think is excellent. I'll plug it. She's too nervous to do a podcast for Broken Silicon. There are some people, and this is not surprising in the PC Silicon space, that don't want to do a live chat for 2 hours. I'm a little unique, I think, in doing that. No, I don't eat much candy. Besides how much I drink, I'm pretty healthy, actually. I have to do something right with how much I drink. I better work out and not eat candy. I'm not having another beer for free, brah. So you want me to drink another beer, it's going to be more than free, and it's going to be more than a couple dollars. I would consider a tip a decent tip that keeps me going for another 20 minutes, but I do have to go for sure in 30. All right, I'm cutting this off in a minute if there's no last minute things, though. It is snowing here. Preston says, I gave more here than I do for your Patreon. That's very true. Yeah, drinking keeps the heart rate down. Well, and I would want a tip that has an actually good question. Is there any reason to stay going, you know? All right. 30 seconds. Because if I don't cut this off now, Preston, I'll keep talking if you had a question there. Type it last minute. You got 10 seconds. You tip me. I have a soundbar. I do have a soundbar at that TV. All right, fuck it. I'll go a little longer. I was gonna say, unless I see several tips, I'm not going longer. All right, I'll even get a special beer out. Keep in mind, you just screwed over everyone else who wants to watch this because now it's going to take an hour to render this on YouTube servers. All right, let me see how much longer I got, guys. All right, this one is a strongbow, which is for you European viewers who are still awake, if there's any of you still awake. And this is not the bullshit American version. This is what I drank when I was in college in Carlisle, United Kingdom. This is the original dry version, not the one loaded up with sugar that they sold to Americans as golden apple for the longest time. How happy I was when I noticed they started selling the original strongbow here. Dude, in England, you can get like a liter bottle, like a Pepsi liter bottle of Strongbow cider for like what, like £4? It was so cheap when I went to college there. All right. So I'll drink this in support of my European brethren. All right. Should I do 5700 XT or Big Navi? This is from Preston again. You know, it depends, right? It's so hard, right? Preston, type right now. Type right now. What graphics card do you have now? Like, I'll look right now. You have like 10 seconds to type it. It's another person asking me about what chair I have. Uh-oh. Max is doing the countdown. Preston, 580. Okay. Is that so? You typed 580X. Was that a mistake? Is that like a mobile version that I'm not aware of? But let's just say you have a 580 or weaker, right? If you have a 580, it depends what resolution you play at. If you play, well, it really doesn't, in my opinion. I have a friend who has a 580 and just plays 4K 30 hertz, and he doesn't care about 60 hertz. I mean, if you have a 580, and I assume you have an 8 gigabyte version, right? If you have a 4 gigabyte version, it's hard to say. 580X, All right. Well, you tipped me, so I'm actually putting effort for you here. 580X. This has to be some goofy. Oh, here we go. Let's see what it is. 36 compute units. Oh, yeah, look at this goofy thing. No, yeah, this is some weird OEM card. That's hilarious. Huh. What? Why? Why does this exist? Why does this exist? I'm putting this down as a timestamp. Why does this exist? 204 580X. Why? Yeah, it's a 580 though. Yeah. It's a 580 though. It is a 580. Except if I go to 580. Yeah, it's a 580. I don't know. This is weird. He is right. It's a 580X. It's like some OEM card. But that's 8 GB, so that's good to know, right? Yes, it is 8 GB. Okay. I don't know. Maybe it isn't, right? I've never heard of this. So 580X is it's just a 580 though. Anyways, that's funny that they have that existing on their website. A 580 is an 8 GB card. It's about as strong as a PS4 Pro, probably a bit stronger depending on the game and if it's optimized for PC or if it's some stupid console port. I mean, this is not going to have any problems. I think if you're happy with the settings you have now, you wait. I really do. But if there's some game that you just get a ton of joy out of and it's struggling, maybe consider upgrading. But I find that hard to believe. Am I wrong, Preston? The 580 is one of those well-rounder cards. I'm trying to think of like another one, like the it'd be like, because it really has enough RAM, enough bandwidth. It's never going to do gaming in some games as well as some of the more powerful cards. But I never feel like the 580 is ever going to bog down. As 2304 stream processors, Polaris is well supported. It's an architecture that PS4 Pro uses, so they're going to support it well in engines. I really feel like you're fine. It's just wait for the next gen consoles because prices will be cheaper. But if it's having problems, I guess maybe upgrade. Like I said, upgrade if you need to. If you don't need to, better stuff's coming every quarter for the next 5 years. I hope I answered you. This has definitely got to be my last beer. Yeah, 2 liters for £5. That's right, Glenn. It annoys me. By the way, this is like a craft beer here. They sell this stuff like it's PBR in England. That's what's so funny. Oh, it's going with a 3800X, 5900X. Preston, what CPU do you have now? Type that. You tip me. Stop tipping me, Preston. Just type. You've tipped me enough. I feel bad. So other people can tip. You don't need to tip me anymore. But you got to do it like within 10 seconds. 10 seconds of me telling you to type. Otherwise, it's going to be drowned out by the other comments. Well, the thing about the 3800X, Justin, is that it's going down in price. Pretty soon, I think the 3800X is going to be only about $50 more. It is a third tier yield of, 2600. So again, if the 3800X, am I saying the right name? Yeah, 3800X is only, let's say, 10% more than a 3700, maybe 20%. I would consider that for the high frequencies it can hit, especially because it's on. And actually, let me say this. This is something most people haven't noticed. If you have a 3900X, you don't want to turn off hyperthreading, because the way they distribute the load over 2 chiplets, they expect hyperthreading to be turned on. So there will be games you get a performance drop. However, the 3800X is a single chiplet. So if you disable hyperthreading, I do believe there's a few games where you really do get a 10% boost. So that's the one thing I would say, everyone. If you're a high refresh rate gamer, a 3800X, if it got to about $350, that's better, probably about as good as gaming as the 9700 if you turn off hyperthreading and overclock it to 4.5, 4.6 gigahertz. These are clock speeds that 3700X can't hit. That is when you get a 3800X. That is when you do it. But I agree, all things considered right now, the 3700X usually makes more sense. And you have a 2600, Preston. So to answer your question, you're streaming though? Well, I mean, I don't know. It's up to you. The 580 will stream fine. And if you care about what the quality is that your viewers are seeing, 580 is good enough. They're not going to know the difference between 1080p 60 and 1440p over a stream. So I would wait. I would say the CPU upgrade's probably more important. But again, make sure that 2600 is actually bogging you down right now. Because if it is not bogging you down right now, the next gen consoles have 8 cores. You might want to wait to see what happens with software after the next gen comes out. I'm not just telling people to wait, but it's not like you have an i3 and 560 Ti. If you do, I'd say upgrade now, but you don't. You got a 8 gigabyte graphics card and a 12 thread processor. You have more threads than me. What the fuck? C-Sesh, I've never actually been a Witcher fan, to be honest with you. I have not played the last Witcher. I'm aware it has good reviews. I did not like the first 2 Witchers, though. So to be honest, I'm probably not going to watch that. I can talk about TV all day, though. But I'll be honest. You've asked a few times. I'll be nice. I have not watched that trailer, and I probably won't watch The Witcher. But if it got really good reviews, and then I'll probably look into it at least. Yeah. I'm kind of crazy. I mean, yeah, I know. I'm fucking nuts. Andy, you piece of shit. Classic Andy. Oh, he has an i7 2600. If you're streaming, you want to upgrade, and I would get a 3900. That's what I would do. I assume you're still watching. Seems like you're a pretty big fan. So I would say if you're still streaming, 3900. And that I wish that 3900 would come out too, by the way. I would consider that over 3950X. But I know that there's almost no point in them giving that to us plebs. Justin, Tom, I'm getting an LG C9 soon. That's the TV behind me. When do you think we'll get a 2.1 output to fully utilize 4K 160 native? Yeah, so right now my Radeon 7 does 120 hertz HDR 1440p, which is fine, right? It's not like my Radeon 7 can do anything above 1440p 120 hertz anyways. Or I play Sekiro in 4K 60 HDR on my TV. I mean, I think, unfortunately, it sounds like it might be RDNA 2.0 to get that, which is so stupid. And the next gen consoles will have 2.1. So it has to be, right? RDNA 2.0. Whenever that comes out, that's when you're getting HDMI 2.1. Long overdue, as usual, with AMD. That's the one annoying thing is I just wish AMD would update their outputs more often. That's one thing that NVIDIA really has screwed them on multiple times, if you think about it. But if you have and going back to Preston, if you have a 2600K, almost everything's an upgrade for you at this point. That's what's so hard about recommending stuff. I would just go to but you got a 2600K. I would get a 3900X, right? Yeah, I mean that's my honest upgrade at this point then, because you have to think about the type of person who buys a 2600K. That's probably the type of person who wants a premium experience. 3900. And then the 580 is up to you. Again, graphics cards are easy to upgrade, right? You just out and in. So I wouldn't worry about that too much. There's always going to be cheaper graphics cards. Is my point. All right, some guy tipped me for a candy check. Sorry for that weird pause I just did. What? Reese, it's okay. My dog is like cowering around right now for some weird reason. When will Apple move to AMD? Dan Nagura, that's a good question. Honestly, I don't. I've been wondering that for a while. I think a lot of it might come down to the fact that Intel's probably willing to bend over backwards for Apple, and they should. I mean, if you look at, I had a MacBook Air a few years ago. It had a Broadwell APU, and that thing could play Battlefield 4 720p 30 hertz locked multiplayer, 64 player multiplayer, i7 APU, used 15 watts, had like a 10-hour battery life. They design a lot of their powerful APUs that are super efficient at like the 10 to 15 watt level just for Apple. They bend over backwards and they probably give them a super good deal. And that's my understanding too, is the way Apple buys things from these companies is they go, okay, we're not going to give you the best price, but we're paying you like $2 million up front for this thing that we're promising to buy for this long. That's why people want to partner with AML. It's just money in the bank. So with that in mind, again, think about that server engineer broken silicon. Why would Apple switch to AMD? It's new software. It is more work. They have to program for AMD's processors and all this other stuff. It is actually extra work, more than you might think, to switch to another vendor, which is something I understand all too well. I mean, it's not, maybe not processors, but I have to deal with people all the time trying to convince them to buy our company's products over the competitors, even if ours are better. It costs money to switch. So that's probably why. And we know Apple's end goal to build their own processors, and their IPC on their iPhones and their tablets is incredibly good. It's just not x86, right? So, and the end goal for Apple is to just switch to their own designs. And with RISC-V coming out, they know they don't even need x86 eventually, even if their own instruction set becomes outdated. I assume they stay with Intel because Intel bends over backwards, and because Apple wants to get rid of both of them, right? But they've gone with AMD graphics for a reason. But we'll see. The end goal would be as if AMD could just make something so much better they can't say no, and they just switch with one generation. But I would wonder how long that would last. And Apple wants to move to their own designs. They don't want anyone else to be able to control what they have. That's why. Which is like a short-term bonus for Intel, but long-term, I don't know. Not good for them. Okay. So the beef brisket's almost done. I'm not sure how much longer I'm going to go here. And I know I keep saying that, but if I go any longer, I'll just be hammered and saying dumb shit. So There's a lot of reasons people burn bridges with NVIDIA. I'll say that, Max Sampla. There's a lot of reasons. It's sometimes their reliability, it's sometimes their software, it's sometimes their pricing. But here's what always seems to happen. What always happens is NVIDIA blames you if something goes wrong and not themselves. And they burned a lot of bridges with TSMC, with Fermi. And it's just, yeah. Never be surprised when a company stops working with NVIDIA. That's what I'm told by people who work there. Thoughts on Cabo? I don't know what you mean by that. Did you mistype something? I don't know. You have to elaborate, Allie. I don't know what you mean. Why am I recommending so much to buy a 2080 Ti? I don't think I am, Julian. Is that something I'm doing a lot? The only thing I ever say about the 2080 Ti is if you have a 9900K, I hope you have a 2080 Ti, because if not, you should have bought an AMD processor and a cheaper graphics card. That's my point, though, is right. You should only have a 9900K if you have like a Titan RTX, because otherwise it's cheaper to get a cheaper processor and a stronger graphics card, right? All right, let me see here. Allie did say something, though. Common on-board optics. To be honest, I don't know what this is, so I apologize. If you want to ask another question, Allie, do it. Yeah, I mean, I'm reading this right now, right? Consortium for onboard optics. That's not something I'm going to be able to answer right now. I'm not just going to spit out. I know nothing about it. So it would be me reading a Wikipedia article. I'm not doing that. I'm honest when I don't know what I'm talking about. Yes, I did see Sesh used to do stand-up comedy. My favorite comedian is Aziz Ansari. Sorry, I had to remember. It's Aziz Ansari. And then like there's a million top tier comedians I love. I mean, I love Tom Segura. I love Dave Chappelle. I love God, there's so many. Scott Ackerman's my hero, actually. Like he's probably my biggest influence. And he's not even a stand-up comedian. I mean, obviously I love Will Ferrell. I love Jason Killum, Melissa Villasenor. I could go on forever, dudes. Like Chris D'Elia is hilarious. D'Elia. Dude, there's so many. When I was little, I liked Dennis Miller, Ellen DeGeneres. Ellen DeGeneres is still very funny. Chris Rock's a classic. I don't know, dude. There's so much. Louis C.K. I'm going to see him in a month. He's had some problems lately. We'll see how that turns out. Hot Saucerman. I love it. Ed Sork. Yeah. Dane Cook is funny, even though people shit on him. I don't think he's as... I guess this is me in history. If I ever become famous saying I don't think Dane Cook's as good as any of those other people I just said, but I do think Dane Cook's very funny. Do you think console games will be more optimized for PC with PS5 and the new Xbox? And will they have much more power? So the way I describe it to people is the PS5 is going to be a 9900K and a Titan RTX in performance overall. And then it will also have the added abilities of probably better ray tracing and faster storage than you can even buy on PC for most people. That's it. That's what the next gen consoles are going to be. So you do the math, right? Now the next Xbox, I don't have as good numbers. Look, guys, isn't it obvious? I like PlayStation a lot. I know more PlayStation people. I don't know that many Xbox people, except for the Zen Whispers thing. And that was luck that I got to drop that bombshell before anyone else, honestly. So I can only tell you what I really think the PS5 is going to be. But everything I read is that the Xbox is going to be very similar. I really hope it has Windows on it, though, because that would be insane. Jim Carrey's a very good actor. He's kind of gone off the deep end, though, hasn't he? No, I do not like Gabriel Iglesias, dude. I do not. Seems like a nice guy, though. I mean, I'm not, you know. I remember me when I was a lot into consoles. I'm into games and I'm into hardware. And Sony makes a lot of good hardware. Sony also fucks up a lot of hardware. Don't get me wrong. They really screw up, dude. But good night, Esk a monster. But I really am impressed by Sony's hardware capabilities. They do screw up a lot. I'm not like into consoles. I'm into good games. And if you're not on a console, then you're not playing the best games. I'm sorry. Your mistake. I don't know what to tell you. And PC was better from 2011 to 15, I would say. That was like the real golden era of the last renaissance. But PC is like trying to kill itself right now. Yeah, download Ubisoft, download Origin, download Steam, now download the Epic Game Store. That is DRM, and there's no price drops anymore. And the sales on PlayStation Network are cheaper than Steam now. Ooh, like it's like PC gaming's killing itself, guys. I don't know what to tell you. Like all the stuff that brought me to PC, where is it going? I'm not like it's getting worse. Favorite PlayStation exclusive? There's like 100 though. Right? Like I'm an old school SOCOM clan member. Someone can clip that and make it sound like I said something way worse since I said clan member. Like SOCOM 3, I had a big convoy clan, you know. Like SOCOM, I played so much. So like if my favorite games are just Metal Gear Solid 4, SOCOM, Combined Assault, and The Last of Us and Demon Souls. It'd be like a 4-way tie. But there's so much. There's a lot of people typing now. I clearly stirred up the hornet's nest. Yeah, Fallout was fantastic. I always told that to my friends too. I had friends who bought Fallout 3 on console, and I'm like, you guys are fucking up. Fallout might as well be a PC exclusive. The mods, keyboard and mouse. I like keyboard and mouse on Fallout. It just loaded faster. Like if you have an SSD, Fallout just loads as you walk into a door. I can't imagine playing Fallout on a console. That would be terrible. I like Fallout 4. That's my favorite. Well, I don't know. It's hard to say, but I've never been a big Fallout fanboy, but I like Fallout 4 quite a bit. But also, I'm a weird person. I like building all the settlements. Shroud moves to Mixer. Dude, I don't do game streaming, JH Prep. So I don't really care about this whole Mixer versus Twitch debacle going on. What I will say is this, though. Every single thing I've heard from people that switch to Mixer is that Twitch sucks ass. And like, look at how Twitch treats people that leave. They like try to delete their existence. That's so childish. Keep in mind, I'm also a big H3H3 podcast fan. So like I'm getting most of my Twitch information from Ethan, and he does not think highly of it. All right. I'm feeling like it's almost time to wrap this up. If there's any late joining people, I guess do a tip question, but I've drank enough. This is enough, guys. I gotta take a break here, and I'm feeling the energy moving out. Vape Nation, baby. I wonder how many people like listen to this and get to the end and just hear me go completely insane. That's kind of the hope with the Broken Silicon 11 years of being a PC gamer series. The hope kind of is that me and Dan just get out a 12 pack and we go for like 8 hours straight. And by the last part of it, like we're going over December's information and we're just like, okay, like just completely loopy. That's kind of the plan, by the way. I got to pee so bad. Honestly. I mean, yeah, Battlefield 3 was the last big upgrade to DICE graphics. I mean, I think the other games look better though. They keep getting better every game in graphics. Battlefield 3 was really good. I think I kind of like 4 the most though. So, yeah, I saw Trisha Paytas on H3H3. I thought it was going to be a train wreck, but it was actually a pretty decent episode. All right, you guys are getting off. It's pretty clear this is over. Thank you, everybody. I went longer than I thought I would, as usual. This is probably going to take years for this to render and actually pop up for the people who missed the stream. Hope you enjoyed it. You guys who tipped me kept me going. So, as usual, that's it. But I don't think I have anything else to say. So, I'm done. As they say, and there will be blood. I'm finished.